Thank you, military, because if it wasn't for the Army, there wouldn't be mixed race babies. There wouldn't be Tiger Woods.
You know how many Mexicans my mom walks up to and goes, Filipino?
To explain to my son that there was no thing called the internet, it's like you gotta get a TV spot, and it's like word of mouth, and it was making real flyers out of postcards at Kinko's.
When did you get your break?
I never looked back after the Tonight Show. How do we awkwardly say goodbye on Zoom? I think he's gone.
Hey family, it's Carlos Watson. Welcome to February. We're gonna do something special this month, Black History Month. We're gonna shine a light on really important stories in Black history that may be little known. Think about it a little bit like that movie Hidden Figures, some really important stories that maybe you got swept underneath the cover. We're not doing that here. We're calling it Woke History. You're gonna love it. Dr. Christina Greer stops by to help us with our first one. You'll see her later in the show. But first, you gotta laugh a little, because what else are we gonna do? My man Jo Koy, you know him, funny comedian. You used to see him on Chelsea lately. You've been enjoying his specials on Netflix and elsewhere. He's got a great new podcast, new book. He's all kinds of funny. Laugh a little bit. Enjoy my man, Jo Koy.
The Carlos Watson Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance.
Hey, Jo Koy, welcome to the show.
So happy to be here, Carlos. Seriously. Is that it? I don't know what to do. Do you want to just start talking?
No, that's beautiful. You did your thing. Now, I have been loving your comedy, and everybody got so excited about you coming on the show. How did you get into comedy in the first place? Because I find all of you guys who are funny, all of you have a parent who is funny. And usually it's the mom.
That's true.
Was your mom funny?
You know, my mom, God bless her heart, man. She's the OG immigrant. I always say this about the military, and it's a joke, but I say it on stage, and I go, God bless the armed forces, because if it wasn't for the military, there wouldn't be mixed race babies. And I'm a product of that. Thank you, military, because if it wasn't for the Army, there wouldn't be Tiger Woods. There wouldn't be a Rob Schneider. There wouldn't be a Jo Koy.
A lot of soldiers were fighting for this country. My dad was dating. I'm his Purple Heart.
We struggle with identity, and I say this all the time. I love my white side, I love my dad, but after they got divorced, I took on my mom's side. My dad, started his life in another state, and my mom was a big part of my life. So I took on that Filipino side. That's why I speak so much about that culture.
That's the key to an Asian household. Rice. That is always cooking. There's always a pot of rice cooking. The rice cooker's always on. You can get locked in an Asian person's house and all the lights are off. You can find the kitchen. Just look for that little square red light. There's the rice right there.
I struggled with identity when I was a kid, but latching onto that culture and that family and how fun they were and how funny my mom was. I always say this on stage. I'm sorry, I talk. When I drink coffee, I talk. But I always say this. Before there was Facebook, before there was Instagram, MySpace, whatever it was, my mom literally came to this country as a Filipino immigrant with no friends, and she had to find friends. And that was literally, I did that joke on stage, but literally walking up to anyone that looked like her and just trying to compete, like, are you Filipino? I mean, it's funny that we say this now, but that's literally how my mom made friends.
You know how many Mexicans my mom walks up to and goes, Filipino? Mexican! Sorry.
And thank God for her humor. Her humor got her by, as a single Filipino woman in America. That's a tall order, man. And for her to pull it off and get these, we had like these cool little dinners that we would do every weekend with a bunch of Filipinos that became friends. And, there were no Filipino restaurants, so all the parents would bring Filipino dishes. And it was like this community. So I always compliment my mom and her wit and her ability to communicate and talk and interact and joke around with people. And Yeah, that's where it came from. That's where a lot of that dialogue comes from when I'm on stage.
Now, were you the class clown? Were you the wise ass in high school, or what was the deal?
1,000,000%. I knew I was going to be a comedian when I heard Richard Pryor's tape. I listened to it. I fell in love with stand-up. And then Delirious came out.
Ladies and gentlemen, Eddie Murphy!
And when I saw Delirious, I was just like, I couldn't believe, because one, I don't think people understand, Eddie Murphy was only 21 years old when he shot that special. Everyone telling him, hey, you're the funniest guy around, and here's a huge HBO special, do it. And it was amazing. Like, if you would have seen me at 21 doing stand-up, it's awful. You know what I mean? So, like, that's what I loved. That's what I love so much about Eddie Murphy's Delirious.
The ice cream man is coming! The ice cream man is coming! Ma! Those are some money! The ice cream man is coming!
I fell in love with the storytelling, the hipness, the coolness of his delivery. And right then and there, I think I was 11 years old. I told myself, I'm gonna be a stand-up comic. And my dream came true when I performed in DC at that theater, that same exact theater that he shot Delirious in. I actually walked through the door that he walked out of during that HBO special. And it was so funny because they go, oh, that door has people there now. They actually put seats there so you can't walk through it. I go, hey man, I waited 30 years for this moment. Push those people to the side. I'm walking through this door. To have a dream at 11, going through what I had to go through in the 80s, you know, dealing with the things I had to deal with, you know, in Hollywood in 2015 even, where I wasn't even looked at for a special, where they were passing on me. And I was like, wow, really, why? To where I had to shoot my own special, myself, with my own money. You know, I didn't find it fair. And so there was a lot of that on my chest that came out on that stage that night, where I was like, yo, I did it.
Were you ready that night? Because in some ways, that could almost, to your point, be almost too much pressure, too much buildup.
Nah.
30 years, all that. Were you ready?
I was so ready, man. It was that moment. It was that, you know, my sister was backstage. I was like, man, I'm about to rip the roof off of this thing, man. It was that moment, man. That was, yeah.
You know, we had on the show earlier, who's friends with Eddie, is George Lopez. Have you met George yet?
Oh, of course. I love George, and I just want you to know I came up with a lot of these guys too. My group that I came up with, you know, and we're best friends to this day is, you know, Chelsea Handler, Tiffany Haddish, you know, Gabriel. Like, those are the guys I came up with. So it's just great that we all came up together, and here we are sharing these moments at this particular time, and it's a beautiful thing to be, you know, with Tiffany and just hugging each other. Like, you know, she was just here at my house like 3 days ago. We're just eating and just, you know, reminiscing about, you know, our times struggling at the Laugh Factory, to flying a private jet to Ohio to do a show, you know, in the middle of a cornfield with Dave Chappelle. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of stuff Tiffany and I pinch ourselves about all the time. Like, wow, it's crazy that we're here now.
Be fearless! We can do it! I believe in you! We can do it faster!
Our home is the training ground for her dreams policy. Insure carefully. Dream fearlessly.
But I'm always interested when I hear these stories of like all these young lions coming up together. If I had asked you back then, who's gonna break big, would you have predicted the four of you, or would you have said, no, there's some other dude who would have broken big?
That's a great question. I'm not gonna lie, man. They all kind of crushed it. Michael Blackson, JV Smooth, like, those are all cats that I used to work with. You know, like, it's a different time now. To explain to my son that there was no thing called the internet, you know what I mean? And that it was like, you gotta get a TV spot, and it's like word of mouth, and it was making real flyers out of postcards at Kinko's and cutting them and putting them in front of, you know, windshield wipers at the mall and getting chased off the lot by security. Like, I really had to do that stuff. And you know, I still have those flyers to this day. having a flyer with me and JB Smooth on it, like it touches my heart.
Why do you think all of you guys made it? Like whenever I see that concentration of people, like football players who all come from the same area or entrepreneurs who come from, the same region, why did so many of you guys make it?
There was this drive, man. Like it's hard to explain to people that Def Comedy Jam was more than just a black comedy show. It was a movement. It's historic, it's iconic, it was needed. People that weren't black that got to see something that they only had their ears to the ground about. Def Comedy Jam is the reason why we have Martin Lawrence, Chris Tucker, Cedric, Steve Harvey, Robin Harris. I can keep going, you know what I mean? Bernie Mac, it's like just that one show. If that show didn't happen, would we see those guys to this day? You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to explain that to my son because he has everything on the palm of his hand now. Whereas for us, Def Comedy Jam came on at midnight on Saturday. And you waited for midnight, bro. And the reason why, where I'm at, it's because, like, I didn't have an identity. Like, who did I have on TV? Who represented half white, half Asians? I went crazy when I saw Tiger Woods winning the Masters for the first time. It may sound funny to people out right now, but we had no representation. And I embraced Tiger because he represented my life and my story. And he represented a lot of us. So that was that door opening. It was that door that he opened and he kicked it wide open and he made all of us like he gave us that like, yeah, we're here and we can make it too. Like, look at us, we have talent.
Something in what you're saying makes me feel like your son is gonna become a comic. I don't know why I'm thinking that, but is that true? Do you think
I would love
he's
it.
on a path to becoming a comic?
I would love it. And it's a different thing for me and how my mom was. When I told my mom I wanted to be a comedian, she cried. You know what I mean? Like, that's not why she came to America. You come to America and you have the world, in her eyes, the world in our hands, and I choose a career like comedy. It made her cry. Like, no, you're gonna struggle. I don't want you to struggle. I don't want you to go through the life that I had, and I get it. Whereas now, I get it. I understand it, man. If you got talent, pursue it. And I'm gonna back you I'm gonna back you 100%. So, my son is showing a lot of interest in entertainment. He's a musician. He makes beats, he makes music. He also is very funny. He loves to act. And I'm just waiting for him to make that move because the minute he makes that move, I am 100% behind him.
When did you get your break?
The first moment was, of course, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
This is his first appearance on The Tonight Show. Please welcome Jo Koy.
And I wore a Filipino flag on my chest because I really wanted to represent my mom that night, in our culture, you know what I'm saying? This is who I am. I'm not gonna be able to say it tonight because I didn't write the routine for it, but this is who I am.
That's my time. My name's Jo Koy, you guys. Thank you very much.
And I got that standing ovation and I got a commercial deal that night. Like literally that week I got a commercial deal. And it paid me so much that I was able to quit for the first time. But the first time ever. I never had to have a part-time job ever again. I never looked back after The Tonight Show. And I was just with Jay Leno 2 days ago and I told him that. I go, bro, you changed my life. And he goes, you waited 16 years to tell me that? So it was pretty cool.
It's the guy that gave me my shot.
My oldest boy.
I love you, Dad.
Yeah.
Hey, what's the best impression you can do?
I love doing Jay because it's a real story. My favorite story about Jay Leno is, it was my first big giant TV performance, and this is when The Tonight Show was The Tonight Show. You know what I mean? Like, it was bigger than the internet, huge amount, millions of people watching The Tonight Show. I was on it with Alanis Morissette and Joaquin Phoenix, so it was a really viewed show. I didn't know how many people were gonna watch it because I was working at a shoe store the next day getting shoes for people, and every other customer was like, oh my God, you're on The Tonight Show. Can I get this in a size 8? And I just go in the back crying. But it was so humiliating and humbling at the same time. My favorite story to tell is the Jay Leno one. And the reason why is because it was my first time on. I'm so nervous. My heart's pounding out of my chest. And the producers come in with the cue cards and they're like, my whole routine is written on this cue card. And they're like, please follow this word for word. This is network television. It's live and we're shooting it live. Most importantly, Joe, don't curse. if you curse, we're gonna have to cut your whole act out. And I go, I promise you I won't curse. And then all of a sudden, Jay Leno walks in, right? And he's like, hey, how are you? Hey, Joe, we love you. So happy you're gonna be on the show. Hey, here's the thing. I know what they told you. Don't curse, but go ahead and curse. If you curse, you curse. You know what I mean? We tape it. That's the beauty of Hollywood. He goes, if you curse, you stop where you're at, I'll reintroduce you, and then do it again. And it's good. Everything will be good. All right? So don't worry about it. If you curse, you curse. Don't worry about it. All right, Joe Koy? As he's walking away, he turns back around and he goes, hey, Jo Koy. And I go, yeah. He goes, don't curse. And then he walks off. It was the funniest thing. I fell for the whole time. I thought he was serious. Go ahead and curse. We'll reshoot it. And then he walks up and he goes, hey, Jo Koy, don't effing curse. And I was like, oh. And then I was back to nervous again. And then he walked off.
What's this thing with Spielberg? How did you start messing around with Spielberg?
Oh my God. When I shot Coming in Hot, it aired. And about 2 months later, I get a call from Steven Spielberg because he watched it too. And he fell in love with the special, and he brought me and my manager in for a meeting. And I literally walked out of that office with a movie deal. It was the craziest thing.
Best advice you give to people or that you gotten yourself on dreaming fearlessly? Because you know everybody's got big dreams. They don't always know how to go about it. What's the best advice you've given people about dreaming fearlessly?
Man, follow your dream, follow your heart. It's a long, long, grimy road, but it's the most amazing journey you'll ever be on. Stay on that path, because once you get there, you're gonna want to keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're gonna want to keep going.
I'm gonna finish off with rapid fire.
Let's go. Let me go.
Hey. All right, your favorite movie of all time?
Tommy Boy.
Your celebrity crush?
Ashley Judd.
Ashley Judd, interesting. Who people mistake you for?
Yeah, I get this a lot, and you might not believe me, but Brad Pitt. Weird.
I do. The Filipino side, I think. I see it. Hey, Joe, this was a pleasure. I was looking forward to it. Everybody heard me laughing, getting ready for this, and man, I appreciate you.
I love you, man. Hey, I got a book coming out. I'm gonna send that to you.
You got to send me the book.
I want you to say this to me, and I'm gonna say it right back to you. You ready?
Yes.
I want you to say Mahal Kita.
Mahal Kita.
Mahal Din Kita. You just said you love me, and I love you too, man. I really do. How do we awkwardly say goodbye on Zoom? Do I just close the laptop? I think he's gone. Yeah, that's the end of the show. Man, that was fun.
Right.
What a fun guy. I would have ironed his shirt. I would have ironed his shirt first. I can see his triceps. It must be a sun shirt. Is that a sun shirt? Oh, Carlos! You're still here! Hey, man!
All right, man, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna go get something to eat, Joe.
I love you, man. Don't eat too much. Your shirt's too small already. Bye.
Wait, my stomach hurts.
I love you, man. What do I do? Press the red X? Where's...
That was bananas. That's outstanding. Hey, I hope you enjoyed Jo Koy as much as I did. He was all kinds of funny. My stomach still hurts from laughing. I love that he kept pushing, that he didn't give up. I know it took longer than it should have for him to get here, but I love that he's here now. Love that he's part of us. Big shout out to his mom. I love who she is. Sounds like she's funny as well. And his son's been a good team player. I can tell that his dad probably teases him maybe a little bit more than he needs, but that's okay. Loving Jo Koy every which way. Hey, now I want to turn to someone else. Dr. Christina Greer, wonderful person, OZY editor-at-large, professor at Fordham. You see her on MSNBC and other places, and she's going to help bring you these wonderful new segments. We call them Woke History. During the month of February, we want to bring you those kind of hidden figures like moments in history that are really important but often kind of hidden from view. We got them for you. You're going to enjoy this. Take a look. Tell me about OZY. So for people who don't know the OZY story, why this should be one of the Woke History segments.
The story of OZY, Florida, is the story of a man named July Perry who was lynched trying to vote and trying to mobilize his community. And so it became a much larger story because of the Ku Klux Klan really targeting him specifically and people like him who were trying to get people to vote in 1920. Most people who were lynched were specifically chosen because they were leaders in the community. This is a tool that was used by white Americans as a form of domestic terrorism to make sure that Blacks stayed in their place. That means you aren't trying to vote. In July Perry's case, the members of the Ku Klux Klan in OZY, Florida were members of the police department and active members of the U.S. military. So there's been this overlap of people who were sworn to protect all Americans, but there was a disconnect with some of those individuals who still don't see all Americans as equal or the same.
There was a prosperous or at least solid Black community getting summarily decimated shortly after World War I by racist, perhaps also envious, white power brokers.
So when we have conversations in 2021 about generational wealth and how in the Black community, generational wealth is lacking substantially, we can look at sort of policies under the FDR New Deal and how they excluded Blacks. We can look at redlining and all the policies after the New Deal in housing and education and environment. The list goes on, but ways that Blacks were kept out economically, not allowed to go to the same colleges and universities. But we also know that Black people weren't allowed to enlist in the military in the same ways. And so by not being able to do that, we also weren't a recipient of the GI Bill benefits that many white Americans had that helped them buy their first house. There were many poor whites who could not believe that Blacks would have the audacity to own a business or to enlist in the military, to actually move from working class into a middle class station. And so this idea that so many other communities are destroyed in deliberate and specific ways so that generational wealth is not passed on for future generations.
Anything about this story that really made you want to make this one of the first Woke History segments we do?
Yeah, well, I think what sort of stuck out for me is that 1920 it seems like a long time ago, but it actually wasn't that long ago, Carlos. My grandmother was born in 1921 in Florida. So when I think about them being alive during this time period that lynchings still occurred, or if they did try to register to vote, they either had a poll tax, which means you had to pay some sort of enormous fine just to even try to vote.
What is the so what for someone who is moved by this and would like to see us all get to a better place?
I think that they could look at what's going on with voting rights in their own state. There are many organizations that are trying to help, and many organizations that work in a bipartisan space to make sure that people actually have free and fair access to the ballot. And there are far too many states, not just southern states, but far too many states that specifically exclude people, not just people of color, people of a certain class, to make sure that they don't actually have the same access to voting as everyone else.
Give us a Reset America idea, meaning that one of the things that we're thinking about a lot on this show and on OZY more broadly is what would happen if we started focusing on creating America 2.0?
I would get rid of racialized gerrymandering. Far too many states consider it partisan gerrymandering, but as someone who went to gerrymandering camp at Tufts University with a bunch of mathematicians and political scientists, there's so many ways that mathematically we exclude people from their full citizenship. And it's literally drawing lines to make sure that people don't have the same access as others. And so I'd really look at a way that we can figure out the best way to do nonpartisan gerrymandering that does not hurt groups of color in particular. It doesn't hurt poor people, it doesn't hurt people who are in rural communities or people who are in cities, and really thinking about the way that we can draw lines to make it as fair and accessible and equitable as possible.
Love that. Hey, that was Dr. Christina Greer with some woke history for you. Thanks to her for stopping by. I hope you really enjoy that. I love this new segment. I think it's big. I think it's important. Let me know what you think. Remember, if you want more of this show overall, you can subscribe. You can try our podcast, which allows you to get the extended conversation. And of course, if you're really enjoying it, please tell a friend. Share it a little bit. I'm Carlos Watson. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you soon. Hey, tune into the Carlos Watson Show. It's like no other. You're going to enjoy it every weekday on YouTube.